Nothing here, honey. We watched the time.
I know, Daddy. I don't want you to worry about it. We won't do it right now. Yeah. Tell me something, Dad. When you came from Germany, you first landed in Texas. So you're a Texan.
I'm a Texan. Galveston, Texas.
Galveston.
When I put my foot on another land, America, Texas. And we enjoyed every bit of it. I don't know, it just seemed like we had so much fun. You know, we were about that age, you know, that 10 years old and Carl was about 12 or 13. So we had, you know, at that age, we open for everything, you know.
You thought that was going to be the wild, wild west.
I was somewhat disappointed when we got to Baltimore. We, of course, we wanted to get off of the ship and walk around the wharf, but they wouldn't let us because we weren't citizens, you see. So all we saw was when we used to watch the black guys unload. You see, we had quite a lot of freight that had to be unloaded. And when I saw the blacks, I wanted to see the Indians, you know. It didn't look like Indians. Black. And you remember the little lady that used to have when the boats would come in, she would bring her like a little wagon with stuff on it, popcorn, hairpins, cones, and bananas, and figs, chocolates. She had it down beside the ship. And she sat on a stool, and then whenever we wanted something, we'd pull a cord. She had a cord from her little table up to the boat. And we'd tell her what we wanted, something, and the 6 bananas or 2 bars of chocolate. And she'd tell us how much it was, you know. And of course then we put the money in a little cup, you see. And she'd pull the money down, so she had the money before we got our, you know. So that was sure she got hers before we got ours. And then it was always nice companionship where they would go around bananas and figs and stuff. And then I think we were there 3 days unloading. And then we got started again. We set sail for Galveston. That was our destination. Met New York, you see.
Now you say set sail.
Well, you know, the ship.
Was it a sailboat?
No, it was a...
That's just what you say.
It was near a sailboat. It wasn't a very modern ship. It was a steamboat, a big, pretty good-sized boat.
Was it made of wood or made of metal?
Metal, just
like the steamboats that have today, Bill.
It was a pretty good-sized ship because we had some awfully storms coming through the North Sea. Boy, I'm telling you, at nighttime, you know, when the waves would come over the top in the front, whoosh, way over the top, you know. Ship would go down, up, come back down, shh, another dip, up again, another dip, and then it'd straighten out a little bit. So there were many times that the ship could be, you know, sunk. The kids used to run around upstairs and holler like the dickens when the water come overhead. But the officers chased us back downstairs.
I was telling them about you kids making that hammock.
I don't know, that's too long a story. I'm getting too weak.
I told them the other day about it.
I'll have to tell
Well, let me just ask, Dad, you came from you landed in Texas.
We stayed in
First it was Baltimore, wasn't it?
Yeah, you talking about that?
Galveston. We stayed there, and we had to. The ship had to unload naturally, and there was other passengers, quite a few other passengers that came on with us that landed in Galveston. A lot of immigrants from every nation. We had the nation of everybody, Jewish, German, Polish, Swedish, every type of person on that ship that you could think of. And when I think of, as the boat was leaving, Aunt Mary took us down to the boat. You know, that would be the last time we'd probably see her. I always felt I'd never see Aunt Mary again. And she was there all dressed up, wearing, you know, little umbrellas they carried, and all ruffles and stuff like that, you know. Dressed.
Now, was this your Aunt Mary or your sister?
My Aunt Mary. That's the Aunt Mary I stayed with for 3 years. And she waited until when the ship started. Usually when they start, the band played. I forget the song, some German pieces they played as the ship was leaving, you know. It seemed to me like I wasn't leaving at all, that I was there and the dock was leaving, you know, in reverse. And I said, I want to get going here. And Aunt Mary was down there, and all of us stood in a row. We'd wave at her, and she'd wave back and dab her eyes, you know, crying. She told us downstairs before we got on the ship. She says, I don't think I'll ever see you again. But Mary stayed over there, you know, because Mother didn't have the power of attorney to have her come with us because there was some legal business there. And Alvina didn't have any children. And she loved Mary, you know, and she just did everything to keep her in Germany.
Your sister Mary. But now, did your sister Mary want to come, or did she want to stay?
Well, of course, I wasn't too close at them to watch her, but I did. I'm sure there was a sadness there. There was a desire to come. Naturally, I'm sure there was. And we said goodbye to my sister Mary in Breslau at the station, at the railroad station. Then from Breslau we went to Bremerhaven. But we finally got our stuff unloaded. We had quite a bit of freight with us, big boxes full of stuff that Mother had, and that she had the blacksmith come over and make box it up tight. And they had to all be opened up, you know, and inspected to see what was in them. I remember we had a game in Germany, I guess I had what they call Diablo. It was 2 sticks with a rope like this, and you put a spool in between, and you run it, you know. And then you throw it up in the air, and then you catch it. The other fellow's supposed to catch it and keep it going. Well, they lost that because a spool, we couldn't buy a spool, they didn't have them over here. It landed, and it went into the water. Well, anyway, we finally left there. And that's when our father, I remember there was a popcorn man that used to come around. You know, it seems like in the early days they had those little popcorn wagons with the steam coming up to keep the popcorn going. And they had a little man turning the crank. And the man that owned the cart would sell. And I followed him all around. I almost got lost coming back. I almost missed the boat. And that's about all I can tell you right now, Deb.
You tired, Daddy?
It's just somewhere. I like to tell it in a way that where I have more strength, you know.
Well, now, you went from, when you got to California, did you go to Bakersfield first?
No, well, we went to Bakersfield because Mother was there waiting for us. You see, that was the station, because McKittrick was out of the way place, you see. We had to go to Bakersfield then to take a small train to McKittrick.
So you didn't live in Bakersfield. You lived in McKittrick.
Well, we lived in Bakersfield later on because we went to McKittrick from Bakersfield.
Okay.
Then we come back to Bakersfield,
Oh.
the rooming house, and we stayed there.
Did your mother buy that rooming house?
No, I think Mother must have just leased it, you know. She did pretty good.
And you said 3 years in California.
No, I don't really see. You're in California, how did
We'll,
Well, we went to, then
you're tired, Daddy.
Mother sold the place, and we started to travel. Went to San Francisco to visit the different places up there, and looking out for what kind of business we could get into. And Mother saw an ad in the paper in Green River. They were wanting men to work, you see, because we had Carl Vogel was with us, and Ernst Vogel was with us. They were grown up and they wanted work, laborers.
Did they come with you from Germany?
Not from Germany. They were already over here. But
And they were cousins?
yeah, they were here.
They were Aunt Mary's children, weren't they?
Yeah, Aunt Mary's boys. But we had a lot of, like any family experience.
Why don't you lay down, Daddy?
And sometimes it'd be awful rough, making a living. Because remember, we didn't have a father. Mother was a father. And it was a job.
She was a strong lady, honey.
Huh?
She was a strong lady.
Oh, yes. And Margaret, of course, was her right arm. Margaret helped so much in getting us straightened out. And then we moved to Salt Lake City from Bakersfield
To where, Daddy?
to Salt Lake City.
You moved to Salt Lake?
Yeah, we went to Salt Lake.
I didn't know you lived in Salt Lake.
They didn't live there, honey. Listen to me.
Yeah, well, I lived in Salt Lake and even way back to 1912 or so. Well, we went there not to live there, went there to get work, and it happened to be while we were in Salt Lake. Mother bought the papers, like want ads, and they always had want ads, you could work pretty well anywhere. Oil drillers, mechanics, firemen, cooks, and dishwashers and waiters, and all. And Mother saw the ad in Green River that they were drilling oil in Green River. And we thought there might take a shot at that, because if there's oil, there's always plenty of activity around and plenty of work. So away we went to Green River. We bought that house that you saw. That was Mr. Perrin's house. He was a dentist and he owned the house that we bought in Green River. And then, we decided to make a living. It was so hard to make a living with boarders. You got such a little amount, and Mother was always giving them the best of food. We worked that about a year and a half, and then things started going down. The bank folded up, I think, and the farmers couldn't get rid of their produce. They'd have fruits, mostly melons, pizzas, a watermelon, vegetables, and they would ship that, east or whatever it was. And the time they got the fruit and that to the destination, they owed the railroad company instead of the railroad company giving them, and that went down the drain. And from then on, of course,
Well, I thought you were in Bakersfield for uranium.
No, Bakersfield was a railroad rooming house.
I don't mean Bakersfield, I mean Green River.
Well, Green River was mostly oil. There was some uranium, yes, but not on a big scale, although they did mine uranium. In fact, I worked in one of the layouts out there in Green River for Mr. Baldwin. I know he was a Mormon because Mother told me later on. He was a real nice guy. And he hired Mother. I remember she got $75 a month to feed those men. And of course, before I went out today, they put up tents for all the men. Each tent held 2 men. I think we had about, maybe 20 tents. That gave us about 40 men. And then they built us a tent, a big tent for Mother, to stay in. And I stayed there with Mother, helping her with the dishes and stuff and running errands.
Now, was this out in the mining field in Green River?
It was about 12 miles from Green River. Going into Green River would be about 12 miles.
East, north, west of Green River?
Well, it'd be,
Towards the mountain, or
let's see, Green River,
out in the desert area?
That would be going out west. We would leave Green River to go to the Campanura, and that would be going out westward.
It was called Camp Venur.
Campanura, yeah. And that ran a while later on. It seemed to peter out. Although they did ship, I remember they had quite a lot of shipments that they took out from there. They had Mr. Baldwin would hire teamsters mostly out of Green River. All farmers had horses and teams and heavy wagons, and that gave them work too. They'd go out and haul the ore from Campanura to the railroad station in Green River, and then it would be shipped, I think, to Germany. I believe it was Bremen. But eventually that folded up too, and they closed the place down. And then I forget what happened then. Then we went to, what did we go to? I think we went to Eureka, Utah, and they had, Mother again had a boarding house, which was nothing but slavery and very little money coming in. So we had to let that go. I stayed with Mother. Well, during that time, Margaret was working for an attorney in Salt Lake City.
Mother was a judge.
A judge in Salt Lake City, housekeeping for them, nice family. And he told Margaret one time, Margaret, I want you to go back to school, you know. So they made arrangements and they entered agricultural college in Logan, you know, the AC. And Herbert was working for Bishop Merkley in Layton, and he went with Margaret then too because he went back to school. Same school. You see, they graduated in 2 years from that school. And I was working wherever I could, you know, have mechanic helpers in whatever shop I could get, where I could be near Mother or near Bert.
What was your mother doing while you kids were all away from her?
Huh?
What was your mother doing while you children were all away from her? That must have given her a scary feeling to be all alone.
Oh, sure. And we over here was sure. She was over here all alone while we were in Germany.
No, I'm talking about when you were away from home working. Well, Herbert and Margaret were going to school.
Yeah. Well, Mother always had something to do. But, so when they finished AC, Mother in the meantime had gotten, let's see, she went to Moab then and got a cleaning place started. And then she sold that and picked up Margaret and Herbert and headed for the east.
Where were you?
I was in Detroit.
Was that the time you hitchhiked out to see your brother Carl before he went overseas in World War I?
Let's see, that was, yes, that was after because, wait a minute. No, that was before I went out to see Carl. I'm got mixed up a little bit down there. I'll get it straight. I'm getting a little mixed up, so I better wait, honey.
Did you tell me that you lived in Green River for how many years?
I thought it was a long time. Looked to me, about 2 years.
But they still remembered him. Oh, we went back in 1950.
Well, naturally, the town was small, and we were at the age where everything was together, you know, the parties they had, the women, the mothers, and the families. And the church, I used to go to the Presbyterian church maybe once out of every month, maybe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because the preacher, the Reverend Nethery, he was the scoutmaster. See, and of course, Carl and I joined the scouts, and our activities with the scouts was around the church all the time, and traveling and the like.
What was the name of that lady where we went to her back door? Her brothers were all out at the ranch working.
The what?
What was the full name of that lady that we went to the back door? Una what? Gillis?
Oh, you mean it? Yeah, we went to the back door and she come out. That was the girl that I went to school with. She sat right next to me.
But what was her last name?
Gillis.
Oh.
Gillis, they lived there, I think there was about 10 boys in their family and 1 girl. And she was the only girl in the family. And she never married, she never left Green River, and then she got a job teaching school in Green River. And she was pretty good at writing little stories and stuff she'd send in to Salt Lake City Tribune. And
When, she just took one look at you and she said, "Why, Paul?"
I can't understand that, how anybody could remember, because I looked altogether different.
No, your features were just the same, honey, just a little bit older. You remember how
Una Gillis. What are some of the other people you remember from Green River, Dad?
Now I have to wake up. They need to give you the rest of it to make it worthwhile. I can't go any further.
Asmus.
I wish I could just sit up for hours and hours, but I thought I did that one time. Grandma took some tape, and I don't know what happened to it.
Uncle Bobby took it. Bobby took it, I think.
Oh, yeah. And the story that I'm giving you is a little bit like what I gave them.
Well, he remembers Asmus.
Huh?
Asmus. What was his name? Asmus. He's the one that had that.
Oh, Azimuth store?
Remember?
Well, that was a hardware store.
No, but he took Billy when we were there in 1950.
Oh,
Did
that
you see
Clay
his badger,
Azimuth.
was it he had?
Yeah, Billy, I met Clay, and of course Clay knew me, and his dad had died already, and he took the house over. I don't know whether Mrs. Azimuth was living, I doubt it, but he still had that house where you went out the corner and he showed you the badger.
And was that the house next door to where you grew up?
Yes, sir.
Now, who was on the other side of you, the banker?
You know, on the other side of our house was Brother Woodruff. He was an engineer, civil engineer. He surveyed. They always had a surveyor, you know.
And was his the brick house?
He had the block house.
Block house.
That's the same blocks that the bank was built upon. But Brother Woodruff was a real good man.
Now, what year was that? That was 19...
You came over in 1908, didn't you?
I came over when I hit 1908, so that must have been
You were 10 then.
10. So that must have been in the year of, what, 11 or 12.
About 1911 or 12.
It was during the World War, when the World War first started.
First World War?
Yeah. Whatever that was, I would say 1914. I think.
It's so good to just sit here and listen to you talk, Daddy.
I think you were about 14 years old when you first went to, because you told me you were 13 or 14 when you were in Green River. And who was the girl that you were taking to a party on your handlebars of your bike,
Oh, yeah.
and she fell off in the mud?
Yeah.
You had to go to her house for both of you to get changed.
Oh, yeah.
What was her name?
Monica Scott.
Oh, she's the one that died, isn't she?
No.
childbirth.
Othello Cook died.
In childbirth?
No. Othello Cook was a girl we went to school together. She's a good pianist, and they used her for everything, you know, for playing here. And I played with her, and she called up on me to play when they had the Eastern Star would have their meetings, and we played dinner music while they were having their lunch.
You
Big
played the
deal.
violin, Dad, didn't you?
I played the violin, yeah. And then Mrs. Hampton,
Did they pay you for that?
yeah. I usually got $3. And then Mrs. Hampton, our music teacher that I took violin lessons from, she had so much confidence in me playing that she wanted me to play in the show, you know, for the show. So I went down with her and I fiddled around, sat down there by, I thought it was a big shot, down by the piano, and all the kids were envying me. Look at Engemann, he gets to go to the show free, eat all the popcorn he wants, you know, stuff. But
That was in Green River?
Green River, yeah. And then somebody got an orchestra. I think Mrs. Hampton got an orchestra up, and she had Mr. Ladd, the laundryman, played the clarinet I played the violin. The shoemaker Wilson played the drums. And George Rich, the school janitor, played at that time they called it a cornet. Now we call it trumpets.
That's what my dad used to play, a cornet.
A cornet.
I didn't know that.
And
He had a harp he played.
we played for the dances. We grew up there and the hall would be all cleaned and people would come in and pretty soon, pretty well, that was pretty well filled up because that's not the only recreation they had. And we played for the dances. And that was $3. And always those $3 big dollars. They didn't have money. Paper money. They had big dollars.
That was American money.
American money.
You mean the big silver dollar?
Yeah, a great big silver dollar. And then I got a call from the livery stable, Mr. Wimmer. They sent a telegram to Green River that someone had died that lived around Green River, and they wanted us to deliver the telegram. Well, he couldn't think of any. He knew these people. They moved out near Camp Lenore, where we had the camp, and he asked me if I would take it, if I could deliver a telegram. I said, yeah, I'll deliver it. Because you're the only one around here that knows that neighborhood, that you know the section. He gave me a horse, a nice horse and saddle. And he told me not to overheat the horse. And that was taking a chance because it was toward the evening. Well, I didn't get out to those people's places until way at, well, it must have been around 12:30. And I
You by yourself?
and I had to look for it between the trees. I got up on the top of the cliff there where the camp was, and I had to look all up and down the wind was waving the trees, and I was waiting if I could see a light. Every once in a while I could see a light, camp light. It was a fairly bright light. And that was a tent down on the bottom there. I think it was a Grand River. And then I had to find my way down the cliff in the mountains. The horse was so careful, he could have stumbled. A snake could have bit him, or I could have died there easy. And I finally got down by the river, and I swam with the horse, because there was no bridges. The only place you could cross would be down in Castledale someplace. So the horse took me across all right, and I dried off and cleaned the horse up, tied him up by where the people were, and there was a man and his wife, and I think it was her mother or his dad, one of the two, had died. So I gave him the telegram. I delivered the telegram. Now, she was so worried about me going back. I said, well, I know pretty well the trail that goes back, and the horse knows pretty well. So she says, well, I'm going to keep you. I want you to eat something. She fixed up, fried eggs, German fried potatoes, toast, applesauce, and a lot of little things she made. We sit down and eat. And I ate that, and I got the horse cleaned up and ready, fed him, watered him. And I started back up. I got back up on the top. Then it was level all the way into Green River there, from the gravel hills all the way past the schoolhouse down in town. And the horse, I didn't ride him fast, but a general gallop. Crunk, 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 crunk.
Hello. Hi, honey. Are any of your family up? It's Melissa. Are the girls up?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the girls are up.
I'll go get him.
You gave some good answers in class today.
Who did?
I'm glad that teacher commented on your statement there.
Yeah. That was nice of him.
Yeah.
He and I had a good visit after
Did you?
Sacramento. We were staying around there.
Oh, good.
And he said, I really felt a sweet spirit. And I said, that's what I felt.
Yeah.
He, when I first walked in, I looked at him, and there was kind of a rapport, right away with our eyes. And,
Yeah.
and I sat there in class, and he talked to me. At the end there, he was bearing his testimony, if you noticed, who he was looking at.
Yeah. That's funny.
It's a teacher.
Yeah, good teacher, good man.
Yeah, Billy gave some good answers in class today. Dad, if the Savior had gone to any other nation, would they have killed him? But the Jews? What does it say in the scriptures about that?
Well, he had to go, whether it was in this world and any other world, he had to go through that.
Right, but how come he was sent to the Jewish people, the nation?
Because that was supposed to be a
But
choice people.
that's his family.
Do you recall the scripture that says, and none of the nation would have crucified?
Their Savior.
That's right.
This nation must have something going under or over to have a Savior be sent down here to crucify a Savior.
This was the earth that was crucified on,
Right. And two, there was a good combination going there. There was a political play between the Romans and the Jews. There was the hierarchy of the Jewish synagogues.
Had to be a complete setup for that.
Yeah, it was a setup thing. So there was the rabbis, and they didn't want this prophet who was among them to steal their flock.
Yeah.
And the answer they had was, we've got the Jewish law and we've got the Roman law here. And so that's what they appealed to.
They clung to the Mosaic law, most of it. But then the Lord made it plain, listen you guys, I didn't come down here to
Is this
destroy
where they had
this.
that earthquake?
Yes,
What earthquake?
in South America.
Just recently?
Yeah, Nicaragua.
When was that?
Wild Bill speeches, they are in fact giving the Contras written instructions while the target is
Oh,
people.
it's to do with the Contra affair.
Social and economic infrastructure is what you're getting at.
I understand that the Contras are killing people just as much
You
as
just
the
relax there, okay?
Sandinista.
He earned the boss.
Dad, turn it down for a minute. I want to ask you a question. Did the priesthood, when Christ came, was there a true group of believers? Was there the church on the earth? Was the priesthood here? What was the situation with the priesthood when Jesus came?
Well, there must have been some that held a priesthood. There was always somebody on earth, you know.
John was the only one, he only held the Aaronic priesthood.
But where did he get his
He's
priesthood from?
He got it from an angel when he was 8 days old.
That's right.
There's
Why didn't he
always-
get it from his father if his father held the right priesthood?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about that either. I've got to check that out.
See, it's always been my belief that the priesthood wasn't here, that there were righteous people, but that the true priesthood was not among them anymore.
Just not the high priesthood, Billy.
Well,
No, because John the Baptist, all he held was the Aaronic priesthood.
That's what I'm saying. That's all that was on the earth.
And he says he was ordained by an angel when he was 8 days old.
Yeah.
Now, was he ordained to the priesthood at that time, or he says he was ordained to be something to the Jewish nation?
Was he just called then? Was that his calling?
Let's look it up there.
Well, look at Samuel. His mother took him to the temple for him to be blessed and circumcised.
Billy, you can sit down.
And then
That's
she
okay.
left him in the
Sit
temple.
down here.
He was to be raised in the temple.
Who was that?
Turn
Oh,
your
let me see
light
there. Can I see against and then reveal just a
on. You
minute?
find it better in the Congress and the Conkeys.
Yeah, you would. Let me see. I just wanted to look up.
Well, Mormon doctrine is in on that little table on this side of the bed in Bill's room. It's a paperback cover.
Oh, here it is. Teachings of the Prophet Joseph. I just want to see about
Okay.
what he was ordained to.
was always somebody that had the priesthood, but it wasn't
What
functioning.
would you look under?
It wasn't functioning like
Aaronic
it
priesthood,
was.
or Levitical priesthood.
Would it be in those books on the Savior that like the Moral Messiah and that McConkie wrote him?
There wasn't any organized priesthood, but there was some man that held it, but not in an organized fashion, you know, the way we have it here.
Remember that man that was in the temple, officiating in the temple, and he said his eyes had beheld his Savior, and he had been told that he would live until the Savior came.
Yeah.
Okay, they were officiating in the temple, weren't they?
Yeah, but not what we would do in the temple. They were making sacrifice.
They had a smattering of the law, you know, not the full organization as we have it now.
Where are you kids going this afternoon?
Right here.
The girls that seem to be going out for a ride up the mountain.
Oh, no, that's Melissa. She wanted to take.
Hmm?
She wanted to take the girls up to let them see the high houses up there.
Yeah, there it is. I read this right here. Right there.
Okay, from Aaron to John. The hereditary nature of the Levitical priesthood was in active operation. This priesthood in that day was conferred solely upon worthy members of the special lineage chosen to receive it. It came to individuals by so forth, because the Father said, John the Baptist was a descendant of Aaron and held the keys of the Aaronic priesthood. There was no Aaronic priesthood among the Nephites prior to the ministry of the resurrected Lord. Few members of the, you see, let me see where it says, and there were none among the Nephites.
Now, what's the Levitical priesthood? Is that a Lord?
That's the same as the Aaronic priesthood.
No,
They called it because of the tribe of Levi. He was the one who held the operation of the Aaronic priesthood.
And it was a certain group that were chosen to take care of the material things, you know, of the temple, of the tabernacle,
to do
the
the
carrying,
sacrifices.
sacrificing. And when the Lord came, he had quite a time telling these people, look, I didn't come here to destroy what you got. I come here to fulfill it. So when you fulfill something, you fill the glass up, that's it. Take it away now, pour it over here. Leave it. Now I give unto you a new
Your
law.
shirt's unbuttoned, Bill.
He said, I give unto you a new law. And
Yeah,
the law
exactly.
of kindness, you know, and that it's altogether different law. So you hard-headed Jews and Pharisees, you know, you have to switch a little bit, think different altogether. Here's our girl.
Who's that?
Well, it just says the hereditary nature of the Levitical priesthood was in active operation.
Yeah, so it was.
Well, the hereditary mean from father to son. Yeah, 3:18. Hi, Susie.
How are you feeling, Susie? I bet you feel like I do.
Tired?
A little bit woozy.
Well, I took that Benadryl because I
Oh, that knocks you out.
other medicine to take. My head was so plugged
I
out.
Oh, maybe under John the
Yours
Baptist
could've
body.
taken.
I looked under there. I'm just trying to find something.
That trembling doesn't make you sleepy.
I feel so bad this morning. I can't even breathe.
Baptist, here it is.
I took one of those pills, you know,
How many of your cancer pills had you taken, honey?
right up to date.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, well,
You should be taking your third one in half an hour. You take them so scurry, honey.
no, those pills that I take outside of that, you know, Larry, where it says take one every 4 hours,
Mm-hmm.
as needed. So,
Well, it says here, Joseph Smith says, here is a little of law which must be fulfilled. The Levitical priesthood is forever hereditary, fixed on the head of Aaron and his sons forever, and was in active operation down to Zacharias, the father of John. Zacharias would have had no children had not God given him a son. He sent his angels to declare unto Zacharias that his wife Elizabeth should bear him a son. The keys of the Aaronic priesthood were committed unto him, and he was as the voice in the wilderness.
Okay, that's one thing it says over here. Thirdly, John at the time was the only legal administrator in the affairs of the kingdom there was then on the earth, and holding the keys of the keys of the power. The Jews had to obey his instructions or be damned by their own law.
They would condemn themselves.
But when they say
Christ himself fulfilled all righteousness in the beginning, so on and so forth. Okay.
when he says legal administrator, is he referring to he was the only legal head?
No, John's father.
Well, John's father was the only legal administrator. Is that what it said?
Well, no. John's father was the rightful heir, and then John became.
Oh, I see. Is that what it said there?
No, but that's what I'm saying. Read it and see if that's.
What was it, Zacharias?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was in charge. He was the legal administrator, and then John became the legal administrator.
And he was told and guided about the temple. You know, he was in the temple there.
So I don't know if the angel ordained him to the priesthood, because that's what he was said when he was 8 days that old. But why? Maybe that was holding the key. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell for sure. You know, it sounds like it was. It sounds like it was still being operated.
Moroni, Mormon. I think it was Mormon, 8 years old, or one of the that the Lord gave the priesthood to.
Am I right? Wasn't through Mary? Wasn't Christ? Wouldn't he have been the king of Israel? Haven't I read that before? I mean, the legal.
He was that. Through Mary and through Joseph, had a double one instead. He would have been the
So Joseph was a royal line in the tribe of Judah,
sole parent.
and so was Mary. They were first cousins.
But Joseph was not his father.
That's right. Mary